So let's talk about the 8 essential elements of human synergy keynote. This is my original and probably my flagship keynote. And it's about building and leading world-class teams. The individual that you bring to the table every single day that creates that mindset and that culture that we're truly going to be better together than any individual could ever be alone. So why is team building so important? Because the best of the best never have a goal they can accomplish alone, right? You don't have a goal you can accomplish alone. The best of the best realize that they have to set a goal that's going to knock it out of the park, and they need to build a world-class team around them to get to those crazy, challenging finish lines, especially in times of change. So the 8 essential elements is based on human synergy. And human synergy basically says we're going to be better together than any individual could ever be alone, and that our outcomes, what we're able to achieve together, is so much greater than the sum of our individual strengths and skills and talents. And most importantly, human synergy says, different from teamwork, that we're not just walking side by side towards a common goal. We're figuratively, and in some cases literally, carrying each other and towing each other and creating that wonderful interdependence that gets us across difficult finish lines. So what are those 8 essential elements of human synergy? It's an acronym for teamwork, actually. And it's something that my teammates and I discovered in the sport of adventure racing. So let me describe adventure racing to you a little bit, and then I'll talk about what those 8 essential elements of human synergy are. Adventure racing is a sport that was invented by a crazy, awesome Frenchman and popularized worldwide and on television by a little-known character named Mark Burnett, who started Survivor and a lot of other crazy reality shows now. But basically, it involves small teams. It's either 4 or 5 people, and you have to have 1 man and 1 woman at least on each team. So you have to have mixed gender teams. And the race director will ask you to meet in the most remote location they can find on Earth. And they hand each team a set of maps and compasses and road rules. And the next morning they say, ready, set, go. We'll see you guys in 600 to 1,000 miles. And it's really all about whichever team gets there first wins. And it's all non-motorized transportation, kayaking, mountain biking, whitewater rafting, mountaineering, and the clock never stops. So if you sleep and when you sleep is all part of your team strategy. So the winning teams might get about 1.5 hours to 2 hours max of sleep every 24 hours. But interestingly enough, as physically crazy challenging as that is, that's not even the hardest part of the race. The hardest part is the fact that every single person on the team has to stay together from start to finish. You have to remain within 50 yards of every single teammate on your team. And as you can imagine, there's not even people in your family that you want to spend that kind of quality time with, right? So this brings up an interesting dynamic and an interesting view of teamwork based on the fact that we couldn't say that we were successful unless all of our teammates succeeded, because we'd be disqualified if even 1 person quit. The most important thing that we learned out there had very little to do with sports. What we learned is that Vince Lombardi was right when he said that the secret to long-term success is to play less as an individual and more as a team. As a leader, you play not your 11 best, but your best 11. The greatest outcomes aren't created by superstar individual team members. The greatest results happen when those individual superstar team members embrace the fact that they're going to get to their finish lines faster when they're great teammates. So these 8 essential elements are all about how you as a leader and team builder build a world-class team with people in your life, whether that's someone that you're in a 5-minute sales interaction with, or whether it's someone that you're married to, or that you're with day to day at your work. So those 8 essential elements, let's talk about those. It's actually an acronym for teamwork, and it starts with T, which is total commitment. There's no plan B, it detracts from plan A. Everybody has to be on this bus, and the bus is going all the way to the finish line with no stops. If everybody on your team has that true commitment and inspires that in one another, that's where the magic happens. So for us, total commitment was a matter of what we call the 4 Ps, an incredible plan, a vision of what's possible that's consistently communicated to the rest of the team. The second P was sense of purpose. What is your why? Something greater than yourself that you latch onto when the going gets tough. Your perseverance is the third P, the fact that you always do that extra thing that matters. You always go the extra mile. And you never let your feelings affect what you do. You don't let emotion affect locomotion, because feelings are overrated. You show your commitment to your team with what you consistently do day in and day out. And your preparation. because the luckiest people on earth are always the most well prepared, right? So if you have truly world-class preparation, you put that together with opportunity, you become the luckiest person in the world. The next essential element, the E, is all about empathy and awareness of teammates, that human connection. Because at the end of the day, we don't work for companies, we work for people. So you have to be the kind of person that people want to work with and work for, and demonstrate that every day. The A is adversity management, challenge management, change management. Because if there's one thing that we all know in life, it's that change is the only thing that's ever going to stay the same for us. You know, it's how we really respond day in and day out to those changes that dictates our success in the long run. So how do we see challenge and change not as a negative, but as a springboard, maybe to something even better? Well, a lot of it is your attitude and seeing challenges versus roadblocks, and being consistently focused on not the fear of failure, but the hope of success. You know, what's it really going to take to win in the long run, despite all these challenges and changes, and keeping your teammates focused on that. Also, never letting the pursuit of perfection hinder progress, and embracing challenges as a chance to maybe learn something or excel in a different way, you know, as a springboard to something better in the future. The M is mutual respect. How do we inspire that respect from one another? And that a lot of that is a matter of consistently letting your teammates know that you have their back, that there's nothing negative going on behind their backs, that who you are is your authentic self, and that you're consistently believing in your teammates beyond reason. Because what happens when we believe in people? They rise to the occasion, right? And when we don't believe in them, they also prove us right. And giving respect to teammates as a gift, not as a grade. When you give that respect 100%, where people understand that you're walking side by side with them with that confidence in one another's good faith and trust and affection, that's where the magic happens. The W is we thinking versus me thinking. A we thinker sees a world full of teammates everywhere they look. Their whole world is their team. Every interaction with another human being, they're constantly creating a win-win. Because again, the best of the best never have a goal they can accomplish alone. The best of the best realize that their way to the finish line is building an amazing team around them that they can consistently count on. People that are mentors, coaches, people that have strengths and talents that they don't have, people to whom they can outsource the stuff they're not great at. The further you get in your career, you realize that your success doesn't come from reaching up, it comes from reaching out and being that kind of we thinker. And in that section, I actually talk about how being a we thinker doesn't mean that you necessarily have team goals. You can be a we thinker and have completely individual goals. But if you build a team, even to get your own individual goal, that's where the greatness happens. And I actually show a shot in my presentation of 4 people looking at maps, leaning over mountain bikes, looking at maps. And it looks like one team. Figuring out strategy about where to go next in the race. But what I tell them is that this is actually my top 2 navigators and the top 2 navigators from our biggest competitors in this race, the South Africans, looking at the maps with us at the front of the pack, vying for first place. Now, why in the world did you do that? Because it makes sense. To get a gap on the rest of the field, you get together with the other best and brightest in your field, in your industry, your colleagues, and you go exponentially faster for having worked together, even when your goals are completely individual or those people are not necessarily a formal part of your team. The O is ownership of the project. How do you get that buy-in from everybody on your team? You either bring people onto your team who are truly inspired by the mission, you know, something deeper in their soul, or you inspire the people that are already on your team. And a lot of that is finding out what they're great at and letting them lead with that strength. Or finding out why they're working with you or working for you and helping them get whatever it is they desire out of working for you, because they're going to have a heck of a lot more buy-in. And asking for people's input, because you know that people embrace the things that they help create. And here in the presentation, I show probably my favorite clip about a guy named Dawat Mutang. And he's a farmer from the middle of the jungle in Borneo, but he became an adventure racer by accident at the start of this race. There was a world-class team that had taken second place the year before. They were coming back to win. And on their way walking to the start line, one of their teammates broke his ankle. So they literally found a guy in the jungle. They started knocking on the huts in the jungle. I was watching all this happen. One guy opens the door and they quickly assess, you know, this guy will fit the Lycra outfit that we suddenly have available. And a guy from the middle of the jungle in Borneo jumps in to the race. And not only do they finish, This guy had never done any of these sports before. They took second place out of 63 teams, and there are so many great things to draw from that in terms of not only great leadership and teamwork, but he was so passionate about the mission. And they further inspired him by letting him lead with his strength, which was knowing exactly where he was going. But, more great statements that, sometimes it makes you valuable to your teammates isn't necessarily what you know, but it's based on what you're willing to learn. And that what makes us all successful in the long run isn't just believing in ourselves. What creates successful people is the fact that they get to the start line. They have the courage and the willingness to get to the start line day in and day out and get in the game with the best of the best and find out what they're capable of and discover what they're not capable of and learn more and go back the next day. Exactly like this guy from the jungle, Dawat Mutang, did. The R is relinquishment of ego. And this is a real toughie for a lot of people, right? I mean, the first thing that we say when someone says, "Can I help you?" is what? No, of course not. I got this. But I want people to think of accepting help from their teammates, not as a weakness, but as a gift to the helper. Because it is, isn't it? If you're able to help somebody, how great does it make you feel? So don't take that gift away from someone that wants to help you. It also creates a bond and a bridge. We always say that you have to leave your ego at the start line because your ego is the heaviest thing in your pack. You can't take it on the race course with you. And the K is kinetic leadership, meaning leadership that constantly flows and changes from a couple different perspectives, changing leaders as well as changing leadership styles. And here we talk about the difference between management and leadership, and the fact that on any team, one of your most important jobs, if you're a manager, is to create other leaders. And how do we do that? Well, understanding that your job as a manager is to facilitate all of your teammates' success. You don't always have to be the leader, right? One of the most important things you can do for your team is create other leaders. Let others lead based on their strengths, not on their titles. And then in this section, we also talk about kinetic leadership, meaning situational leadership. And we take a look at a Harvard Business Review study where they took a look at 3,000 middle-level managers over 3 years. Those leadership behaviors, their effect on the corporate climate, their effect on their team, and further, their effect on business unit profitability. And what they discovered, it was really amazing to me, that your leadership style or styles that you live in the most often, that's responsible for 30% of your business unit success. So you really got to be that situational leader who is the right leader for the moment, the leader that your team needs on that day and in that moment, and be willing and aware enough to consistently shift those leadership styles. And at the end of my keynotes, one of the most fun things that happens, and this happens at the end of all of my keynotes, and it's a really neat thing that I started doing because it started happening naturally and organically. So at the end, I talk about how we're all at the start lines now for our next big adventure race of our lives. And maybe that's a goal that you have for the next year in your business, or a big goal that your team has 5 years from now. But really, it's all an adventure race for everybody in the room. And just like an adventure race, you know what the goal is, but how you get there and if you get there is up to you and your courage and the people that you inspire. But it's not only going to take a lot of inspired leadership, it's also going to take you as a leader daring to do mighty things. And my favorite quote in the whole world is by Theodore Roosevelt, where he says, it's far better to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor souls who neither enjoy much nor suffer much in the gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. I mean, that's the worst place in the world, right? The gray twilight. So how do we avoid the gray twilight? Well, one of them is one of the ways that we can do it is by setting huge, hairy, audacious goals. And so I encourage everybody at the end of my keynotes to set a huge, hairy, challenging goal that their friends and family would say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you're going to attempt this, something crazy." So that's one way to avoid gray twilight. But the other way to avoid that gray twilight is by realizing that you have this amazing family around you. You have this great team. You're surrounded by these people in the audience that are your family, that are your teammates. And we like to celebrate that at the end of my keynotes, adventure racing style. So what happens at our races really naturally, and it's so much fun, is that right before the start, as the race director is doing his final countdown and his final notes, all 300 or 400 people at the start line stop talking to their own teammates, and everybody has this moment where they realize, you know what, this is bigger than all of us. And I genuinely want everybody here to succeed and be happy and healthy with all their teammates at the finish line. and all 400 or so people start turning to each other and shaking each other's hands and high-fiving each other and hugging each other and doing the fist bump. And it's really a neat symbolic gesture that says, you know what, you may not necessarily be on my team, but as someone on the same journey to the same finish line, I am with you in spirit, and I got your back, and I got a tow line for you, and I would carry you if I needed to. And for the most part, everybody in the room feels that way about each other. So when I end, I do a final toast to everybody, and like as though I'm the race director, and they're leaving for their next big adventure race. And then we all count down together, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! And because of the setup, everybody in the room starts shaking each other's hands and high-fiving each other and doing the bump and diving on each other in the fist bump. And it's really kind of a neat moment of brotherhood and sisterhood and family where people feel truly connected to each other. So the 8 essential elements is really a great kickoff keynote, and it's also a great closing keynote because it helps people truly connect and understand the importance of teamwork and the importance of team building and how great all of these people are that surround them. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun, and there's so much love in the room, and I can't imagine anything in the world that I'd rather be doing. So thank you so much for maybe inviting me to do this keynote for your team.